Putin isn't the good guy here, but is he as bad of a bad guy, I guess, as it's been promoted?
He is portrayed as the all-intents bad guy. I will agree with that. Some historical context is always helpful, though. So after the fall of the USSR, a significant portion of Soviet nukes were stationed throughout Ukraine, which made the international community, both Russia and the United States, quite nervous. The Ukrainian government at the time was extremely weak. These concerns were legitimate about these nukes falling into some hands that you do not want to have nukes, is how I'll put it. So we did come to the negotiating table with Russia and Ukraine. Russia specifically guaranteed that in exchange for handing over its nukes, it would never invade Ukraine. And the US actually committed to security guarantees on that as well. So it is a difficult position for the United States, but when Russia comes to the table and guarantees, if you surrender your nukes, we will never invade you, and then invades anyway, we have to be clear-eyed about this.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on another fun-filled episode of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, yes, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by our awesome sponsors, Amp America. Get the news you need to know without the corporate media bias or fluff over at ampamerica.com. Also, the Brian Nichols Show powered by Cardio Miracle, the best heart health supplement in the world. So if you want to learn more about how to help lower your resting heart rate, improve that high blood pressure while also improving your pump at the gym, stick around. We'll talk about that more later in today's episode. But first, we're going to go ahead and jump into the topic of conversation today, all things foreign policy, specifically what's happening over in Eastern Europe. We saw Volodymyr Zelensky, who was over here in the USA back a few weeks ago, having a nice little heart-to-heart with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance at the White House. Didn't go as expected, and maybe was actually a masterclass on how to lose a negotiation. To discuss all that and more, joining me from Young Voice is Kyle Moran. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you on the show, Kyle. I know we have a lot of fun stuff, kind of scary stuff to dig into here. All things foreign policy, specifically what's happening over in Eastern Europe. But before we get there, Kyle, do us a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience and your focus that you have here today. You're bringing to the platform about what's happening over in the foreign conflicts over in the Middle East, in Europe, and all that and more.
Sure. So I, as you said, recently published in Real Clear Politics, recent graduate from University of Rhode Island, international relations and history. I've also been working with the Critical Threats Project at the American Enterprise Institute, specifically on the Iran project.
Awesome, Kyle. So let's go ahead and set the stage here for your article over at Real Clear Politics. Zelensky just gave a masterclass on how to lose a negotiation here. I'll do this for the video watcher, which, by the way, yes, we are over on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter. So go ahead, check us out over there. When you do, of course, hit that subscribe button. And yes, we are an audio show. So if you didn't know that, you can take us on the road. But Kyle, give us a lowdown here. We see here in this picture Vladimir Zelensky and Donald Trump sitting at the Oval Office, and this conversation that was 45 minutes in length really has been snapshotted for the 7 to 9 minutes, I think it is, of some of the fireworks, right? Where, there's the one meme I saw where it's Trump and Zelensky playing a game of Risk, and Trump saying, listen, you don't have the cards right now. You're putting millions of people's lives in danger, which, if it was a game of Risk, is funny. But this is actually not funny because it's real people, it's real lives, and it's real danger. So let's talk about this. Just set the stage here. What was the I guess, goal of this initial conversation between Zelensky and Trump, and what did we see unfold for the folks maybe who didn't hear about all this, whether it was on the evening news or the social media or likewise?
Yeah, so Zelensky really wanted to get Trump persuaded to participate in what's being called a backstop, where if any security guarantees that Europe provides through any future negotiations and ceasefires are violated by Russia, then the United States will send in our soldiers, which is a large ask. It is essentially asking the president to commit that U.S. soldiers will die for Ukraine. So if you are coming to the White House to request something like this, it is staggering to engage in such a heated debate on not just national, but international television. Leaders around the world were all watching this, I can guarantee you. And this is something that's going to be studied for years to come.
Well, as someone who I've been in the world of politics now for well over 20 years, I've studied a lot of this stuff from a historical standpoint to just a tactic standpoint, right? Like there is a lot of yin to the yang here. And when you look at the presentation that Trump and JD Vance gave during this talk, the vibe that was really presented by and I'm just going to say the corporate traditional media was that Trump and JD Vance were being bullies, right? And yet, Kyle, there's a lot more to that story and a lot more to the actual video, the 45-minute video that was on purpose or just for the sake of time, either not given as context or just outright omitted by these entities. So there's a lot of kind of yin and yang, again, back to what we're seeing here happen in this Oval Office. It's a very delicate dance between Zelensky and Trump, and then the fireworks happened, right? And we end up with Zelensky leaving the White House with no deal. And of course, he's getting roasted on social media for still wearing his little military suit that he's been wearing. Where's your suit, Zelensky? That was the claim there afterwards. But I guess the main question is, where does this set things now? Is the Russia or the Ukrainian United States relationship fractured? Did this end up getting resolved at all? Talk to us more about that, Kyle.
Well, he didn't just leave the White House, by the way. He got kicked out. That's how badly that
That's
went.
one way to get. Yeah, that's one way to leave.
So, yeah. But the situation right now has recovered somewhat. We have resumed the intelligence sharing with Ukrainian military officials that we suspended after that disastrous meeting. But I think to your point about how the traditional media has presented this as Trump and Vance being bullies, you're quite right about that being misleading. This was not a confrontation that simply that Zelensky simply got dragged into, or that Vance or Trump were bullying him. Numerous times throughout the interview, you could see Zelensky drifting off course, trying to go talk about specifically praising European efforts, and Trump was trying to rein him back in, saying, no. If you're a diplomat in that situation, you have to be able to read the room. You have to be able to recognize that most people have the skills to do this, that Donald Trump is not somebody who's going to take kindly to this. And again, this is not to moralize one way or another, whether that's a good trait of his, but it is to recognize that it is a trait of his. And so he has to work around that if he wants to be an effective negotiator.
Well, it almost feels like, Kyle, that a lot of folks have been demanding this, right? It feels like, we've seen over the past, and I'm just going to, for the past 30 years, especially, America has, while presented itself as this like global leader, the world's policeman, however you want to classify it, we've started to see that, yes, we're leading with that mentality, but in terms of like leading with integrity, with morality, that's taken a real big back seat. And I'm not looking to Trump and saying he is the embodiment of morality and integrity, but in terms of American interests first, right? It seems like a lot of Americans, they've been wanting that American first perspective represented on our standing from a foreign policy perspective. And it seems like America's always leading the charge to then say, here's how we can screw ourselves. So I think there's a lot of folks who very much looked at this interaction and said, finally a U.S. president, not just, bending over backwards to appease, these foreign leaders. Is that a fair take?
It definitely is. It definitely represents how a significant segment of the population feels, whether you are listening and believe that is a right opinion to have or not. There has been a long history of us almost ignoring domestic issues at the expense of foreign ones. So this is to my point of when Zelensky comes to the White House and is essentially asking for a U.S. backstop, which would risk American soldiers dying for Ukraine's sovereignty. If you are going to do that, you have to first recognize that is an enormous ask. And second of all, it is not exactly the smartest approach to be sitting there praising leaders of nations that Donald Trump is at that moment feuding with. And an example that I'll give you on somebody who has handled this much better is the leader of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, who is not exactly that gifted of a politician, but he has enough of a brain to recognize Donald Trump is somebody who, if you go over and you flatter him and give him another elaborate state visit by the king, that he is going to eat that up. Keir Starmer did that when he visited the same day as Zelensky, and you can just see the difference in the outcome of those negotiations.
Well, it's because at the end of the day, too, people are people, right? I know we always, we kind of have this like, there's the normie world, and then there's like this, I don't know how to phrase it. Like there's this perception that there's real life, and then there's this fake world of, politicians and royalty and foreign conflicts. And like, it feels almost borderline Hollywood, right? Because we're in America, and we're very fortunate to Trump's point, right? We have, or maybe it's Zelensky's point, we have two oceans on either side. So a lot of these big foreign conflicts really are outside of our purview, for better or for worse. Like I don't look outside and see tanks rolling down the street or see, smoke in the distance from a missile blast, right? But when you look at the debate in, I guess, in the confines of when it's presented by the corporate media, right? It almost does turn into theater. But at the end of the day, that theater, they are real people. And that's something I think a lot of folks they forget, they don't want to acknowledge, is that like you're members of Congress, you're members of the executive branch, the judiciary, and in this case, Zelensky, Starmer, all of these other entities out there, these world leaders, they're just people. And you look at Trump, one of the things that made Trump popular and dare I say successful before his venture into the world of politics is that Trump was a businessman. And when you go into the world of business, I mean, this is where you get to see human behavior, incentive structures, like the basics of economics 101 really start to play out in terms of both how to make deals, but also how to negotiate and how to deal with other folks who have competing interests. And that's what we all do every single day. But there's just something where people kind of turn their brains off to embrace the theater, the theatrics of the moment. And you mentioned Starmer, and Trump in their interaction. It was absolutely different. And I think a lot of it is just the manner in which they were approaching each other, right? It was not so much a confrontation or a debate or a negotiation on the live TV air, but it was more of more of that pomp and circumstance kind of vibe, right? So I guess what can we learn from this, Kyle, when we're looking at the differences between, Keir Starmer and Zelensky, or name other world leader here. I know we had Abdullah Hayek on the show the other day. We're talking about the King of Jordan and how he had a negotiation with Trump when you're talking about what was happening in the Palestinian region there at Gaza, the Gaza Strip, and talking about taking potential Palestinians to Jordan and how the King of Jordan had to kind of walk this fine line. So what is something that we can take away and learn from, if not us as the public, but just big picture, looking at the interactions between these world leaders? Like, is there a style that you've seen work more effectively? And if so, what can we learn from that?
Yeah. So to your point, there are a lot of lives who are impacted, who are displaced, and who are killed through this conflict. It is easy to tune out just how many people are dying.
Yeah.
But in the Iraq War, the United States lost something like 4,000, maybe 4,500 soldiers throughout the entirety of the war. Russia and Ukraine together lost 2,000, are losing 2,000 a week. So, I mean, the scale of this is like nothing we've seen in so long. Russia's total soldier loss, I believe, has now surpassed that of World War II. So the amount of death that is happening is impossible to overstate here. So regardless of where you come down on this issue, we just need to keep in mind that this is a serious issue that people are dying every day for. And we do need to be serious about getting at least a ceasefire and then eventually a meaningful, just peace for both sides.
Let's talk more about the human impact here, Kyle, because this is something I think a lot of folks are very isolated to the reality of. if you're not on Twitter or X, I guess it's as it's called now, you maybe aren't seeing the horrific videos coming out of the Eastern conflict where you'll have, I mean, for the lack of a better term, brother versus brother, because Ukrainian soldiers and a lot of Russian soldiers, they have a very common shared history, in some cases shared lineages. But when you look at this conflict at the micro level, right, the human impact. I mean, I've seen the videos of a Ukrainian soldier with a broken leg, sitting there praying to a drone, or no, it's a Russian guy. Sorry, it's a Russian soldier who had a broken leg, and he's praying to a Ukrainian drone, please don't drop the bomb on me. And then you see the bomb drop and his body blown to smithereens. It's horrific to see this happen. And yet we are so removed from the reality of this. There is very real human struggles and torment that is taking place over in Eastern Europe right now, the likes that we really haven't seen in modern, I say modern history. I mean, at least American history. Like we're so isolated. I guess, again, going back to the idea of like, we're not seeing all the bloodshed around us, but this is the norm over in Eastern Europe right now.
We've spent the first half of this episode talking about putting America first. But let me ask you this. When's the last time you actually put your health first? Because let's be real, just like the US can't be the world's bodyguard or policeman forever, you can't keep pushing your body to the limit without backing it up. And that's exactly why I've been using Cardio Miracle every single day, both morning and night for the past 2 years. It's not just a heart health supplement, it's a total vascular support system that helps lower blood pressure, improve circulation, boost nitric oxide, and yes, even fire up your pump at the gym. So, if you're tired of foreign threats and high blood pressure, it's time to declare independence from the junk that's been dragging your health down. Go to cardiomiracle.com, scan that little QR code over my shoulder, or use the code TBNS at checkout for 15% off your order. Again, that's code TBNS at checkout, because putting your health first, that's always a winning policy. And now, let's get back to the show.
It is, and that is absolutely why. And to be honest, Donald Trump made a big deal in his campaign about getting this ended before he took office. Now, I always took that with a grain of salt. I would have been shocked if this was that easy. I do think that the Biden administration got to the point where they were completely beyond even attempting to bring this to a close. They weren't even talking with the Russians anymore. So I do welcome further negotiations. But we do need to be more serious about this, both on the U.S. side and on the Ukrainian side. And now, especially with the Russians, I don't know if Russia really wants a ceasefire, as strange as that may sound, because they have been making serious tactical advances in the last few weeks. So we have to be as hard on Russia as they were on Zelensky, if not harder. And in my opinion, harder. Because it's well and good to criticize Zelensky because of his ridiculous antics in the Oval Office. But, I mean, you have to look at the aggressor here. Russia was the one who started this. We have to be clear-eyed with the facts on the ground there. And right now, Ukraine has agreed to the terms that Donald Trump laid out in the ceasefire, and Russia has not.
So, and let's look at that, because I think there is a big debate right now that I want to maybe get your perspective on, because to be fair, right, let's look at this situation. You go back to, even as far as 2014, right? You've had these Eastern conflicts happening over in Ukraine, more or less like a mini civil war. Call it an unrest, call it a civil war, but that was very real back in Ukraine prior to 2014. You had two sides. You had the more pro, we'll call EU type of mentality, and then you had some more Russian nationalist sentiment on folks more on the eastern side of Ukraine. And I believe it was before Vladimir Zelensky took charge, but there was quite a large military campaign on these territories. And this is what originally kind of set up the conversation, that's not the right term, but more of the contention between Zelensky and Putin, or not Zelensky, I'm sorry, Ukraine and Russia. And then you fast forward to the U.S. involvement in the Ukrainian, what would they call it? The Ukrainian uprising, where I think it was Poroshenko was he the prime minister? Was that the,
yeah.
Yeah, so he was more or less removed. And call it removed, call it voted out, but it was obviously due to American influence, right? And then you look at the appeal to get Ukraine as a part of the United Nations. or not United. I'm sorry, a part of NATO, and all of this right factors into very real reasons for. I would dare say anybody would say it makes sense for Russia to be like, hold up, time out, because if it was us, right? If let's say Hamas, or no, how about this? Iran, right? That's everybody's favorite bully in the Middle East to pick on right now. So if Iran was working with Mexico and they made a pact with Mexico, and Mexico became part of the I don't know, the NATO 2.0. I don't know. If that was the case, then all of a sudden we have a NATO 2.0 country at our southern border who is more or less like partnering with one of our enemies. I could absolutely see us saying, no way, Jose, this is a no-go. So let's kind of help walk through that, Kyle, because I think there is both an understanding that Putin isn't the good guy here, but is he as bad of a bad guy, I guess, as it's been promoted?
He is portrayed as the all-intents bad guy. I will agree with that. Some historical context is always helpful, though. So after the fall of the USSR, a significant portion of Soviet nukes were stationed throughout Ukraine, which made the international community, both Russia and the United States, quite nervous. The Ukrainian government at the time was extremely weak. These concerns were legitimate about these nukes falling into some hands that you do not want to have nukes, is how I'll put it. So we did come to the negotiating table with Russia and Ukraine. Russia specifically guaranteed that in exchange for handing over its nukes, it would never invade Ukraine. And the US actually committed to security guarantees on that as well. So it is a difficult position for the United States. But when Russia comes to the table and guarantees, if you surrender your nukes, we will never invade you, and then invades anyway, we have to be clear-eyed about this. And then on the NATO issue, I don't think that this has persuaded the international community to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO in any way, because Russia is not going to take Kyiv. Just as I was saying that we have to be clear-eyed that Ukraine's not going to retake the Donbass and Crimea, Russia has failed for 3 years to take the western parts of Ukraine. So places like Kyiv are simply not going to fall. So where does this leave us? This leaves us in a position where there's going to be a Ukrainian state that's deeply concerned about another Russian invasion that has already been lied to in the past with an agreement with Russia that they won't do this. So that incentivizes them to join NATO significantly more than they ever had prior to the invasion. So I think that is a bad miscalculation on Putin's part.
At what point, and this kind of goes back to my conversation with Abdullah Hayek, at what point, though, Kyle, would you say there is a very real argument for Americans to say, listen, there's tragedy, there's suffering, but I feel the tragedy and suffering here at home, the domestic issues that are being ignored in pursuit of the making things better over in countries thousands of miles away. At what point is there an argument for Americans to say, listen, I get it, but you got to fight your own battles. We can't keep being the policeman of the world. I mean, go, if you want to do your NATO thing, but understand that we as Americans, we're out, right? Like, at what point is there an argument that makes sense in your world?
To much of that, I would say decades ago. Without saying that we're out, I am a huge fan of Poland really stepping up their game. They are going to be the military superpower in Europe pretty soon, because they're one of the only states that have taken defense seriously. If you look at defense spending in even the UK, and then once you get into Germany, Germany was sending its soldiers to military practices. They could not find weapons for these people to hold, so they went in holding broomsticks. This is something you can't even make up. It's like it blows the mind. So these people have not taken their own security seriously at all. Much of this has been because presidents have largely allowed them to get away with it. So certain people will be certain presidents have complained about European spending, but we really do need to get them to step up. Trump has gotten them to step up one way or another. I wish it had been under slightly less hostile circumstances, but I guess that may be what it took. But we do have to look at the positives as well. Poland, in particular, has been outstanding at its own military defense, and especially in recent weeks, their prime minister has really upped their game in terms of military commitments.
Well, and you mentioned maybe this is what it took, right? The hostile situation. I mean, folks listening to the show, they're well aware. I used to weigh 385 pounds, and it wasn't up until I went to the doctor's office that one time, and she's like, "Hey, Brian, you're 18, and you're like at high risk for like morbid obesity, heart attacks, that kind of stuff." And like that moment when I'm hit with the slap in the face of reality, that's when the behavioral change happened for me, right? And I mean, I think it makes sense for folks to say, well, yeah, sometimes you need that slap in the face of reality before you start to understand that, okay, I have to do things differently. And, there is a lot of folks who will just, they'll freak out about Trump for right or for wrong, but Trump was voted in to do a job. And I think he's doing it well. And that is to be the bull in the China shop, right? Like this system we've had in place for the past 70 years in a post World War II era, it's not working the way it was supposed to work. Yes, we became a dominant superpower, but with that, we became the world's policeman. We became more or less like the world's piggy bank. And then with that, we allowed all these other countries to neglect their defense spending, to neglect their own different responsibilities, because we were taking charge and we were the ones leading, but at the same point in time, enabling this behavior. And it's cost us quite literally blood and treasure over the years. And more Americans, especially today, are saying, you know what? No, I'm done. I'm good. It's not that I don't care about people overseas. It's that I care more about what's happening in my backyard. And this is what I said to Abdullah Hayek when we had on our show, because we did get into a kind of a fun little back and forth, but it really comes down to, I think that your average person is at the point where they're like, yep, I'm done. I get it, but I'm done supporting all the extra stuff outside of the purview of our 48 states, or the two, up in Alaska and down in Hawaii. Like the American 50 is what we need to be concerned about first and foremost. So my concern, but also kind of my prediction is, Kyle, you're going to see more and more of an electorate start to say, nope, America, rein it back in, not isolationist, but non-interventionist. Okay, we've made promises in the past. Sorry, they're promises we can't keep. And frankly, they are made by people who couldn't keep them either. And now it's being pushed on to us generations later to maintain the promises from the past generations. Like, folks are just rejecting that en masse. So my gut's telling me that we're going to see over the next 10, 20 years, 30 years, very much a pulling back of America from a global stage in terms of not in interacting, but being that bully pulpit, right? To kind of push the rest of the countries into a direction we want them to go. And I think there are going to be very real consequences to that. Namely, when America pulls back, there will be other countries who will fill that vacuum. But I mean, that's what I'm diagnosing, Kyle. Am I on track? Do you see a different course of action? And if so, what does that look like?
I definitely think you're on the right track, because a lot of that is true. So much of this has become so much government spending, as Doge has been uncovering, has been on such ridiculous things. So we have to take a clear look on what is in the American national interest. Funding transgender operas in Latin America is simply not one of them. I'm sorry to whoever's running that, but it's not. So when you look at on the international stage, Donald Trump is neither, in my opinion, isolationist nor hawkish. He ranges between a extreme variety of both at sometimes simultaneously. So, for example, we are now bombing the Houthis in Yemen, which some people may support, some people may not support. But we have to look at what is in the national interest of America here. The Houthis are blocking international shipping through one of the most important canals in the world. So if you take a purely isolationist or non-interventionist approach and say, well, that's a long ways away, it doesn't really impact us, I disagree that it doesn't impact us, because I think it does. I think that will have big ramifications, not for some other country way that across the world, but for everyday Americans who are trying to get regular goods and services. And I think that if we don't act on that, that really opens Trump up to dangers of inflation, potentially worse than we saw under the Biden administration. If people are just running rampant throughout the world, doing whatever they want with terrorism and piracy and all this stuff. So Donald Trump has taken a really strong stand on the Houthis. By the way, Joe Biden removed this group from the terrorist list, which is insane. Their slogan is, forgive me if I don't quote this correctly, but their slogan is "Death to America, death to the Jews, victory to Islam."
Nice guys.
These are not our friends. These are terrorists. And so Donald Trump recognizes that and sees it for what it is, as a threat. So in terms of moving forward, we just have to be more focused on what is actually in America's interest. And so I definitely hear you on some of this internationalism stuff, especially liberal international institutionalism. But on some of the more interventionist policies, I still believe there's a lot of them that are in our interest. I don't believe that just a simply withdrawal from the international stage is going to be in pretty much anyone's interest.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, Kyle, and I want to position this this scenario that they were outlining, where the question was raised: are we going to a moment in history where we're going to see a realignment from a foreign policy perspective of America more or less, I won't say partnering with, but aligning more with a country like Russia versus more of the European nations? And here was the argument, is that you see that a lot of the more, we'll say that the social Marxism, the more progressive mentality, that has really built up in Europe. And they seem much more focused on creating this type of this type of society moving forward. Whereas the argument was positioned that America and Russia are more sociologically, societally, I guess, compare and contrast, more on the same page. And they were arguing that Russia is more of like a 1950s America right now. Is that a fair assessment? And do you see that being a real outcome down the road, or do you think that one's off base?
I don't think so at all, because if you look at, I mean, I am all for mocking and the French, for example. It's America's longtime pastime. There's always room for that. But when you look at, I mean, the divorce rate in Russia is 70%.
Really?
That is, yes. It is such a lie that is put out that they are they may portray themselves as being the super trad country, but they're simply not. This country is the ex-Soviet Union, where there was brutal repression of the Orthodox Church, the largest church there, for almost a century. They executed priests. They sent them to labor camps in Siberia. These people are not, if you are looking for a traditional country, you should keep looking, in my opinion.
All right, Kyle, you got me mid drink there. I just realized we're already at 30 minutes for the show, so we're going towards the tail end of the episode. So how about this? I will. I'm choking on my own spit here. I will go through and I'll quickly do my final thoughts. I'm going to turn things over to you to bring us home.
Sure.
This has been a recurring conversation we've had here in the show, and candidly, I really haven't had the right answers. And it's not because I'm not educated in the area. It's just there are so many different competing narratives, competing interests, that it is a big, messy ball of muck at this point. And for me, I always teach my sales teams and when I'm doing coaching and stuff, I always teach the idea of control what you can control, right? And this stuff, all the foreign interventions, the wars overseas, the stuff beyond our global borders, they're just stuff that we can't really control that well, right? Like we can try to pull levers and change behaviors, but we can't control it. And this has been something I think we've really brought into our American foreign policy for the past 70 years is we're going to try to control everything, right? We're going to go over to the Middle East. And we're going to control Iraq and control Afghanistan, and we're going to control Vietnam and control Korea and go through all of our non-war wars that we've had. That has been the overarching mindset. And I'm seeing, especially with more of like the Gen Z and goodness, Gen Alpha taking over now over the next 20 years or so. I know, get ready.
I know that's scary. I'm starting to feel my. I'm technically Gen Z, by the way, but I mean Gen Alpha. This is getting crazy.
Skibbity, yeah, exactly. Or so the kids say. But like, I think we're going to see more and more of that generation just be like, yeah, no, I don't say I don't. Well, I bet they will say I don't care, right? And
Yeah.
I'm concerned that we're going to see more and more folks just say, you know what? And I'm not even so much saying concerned. I guess it's just I think this is the inevitable outcome of I want to control. I can control, and I can control what I see in my own community, right? I can control my impact in getting involved or volunteering or going to local school board meetings or going to city council meetings. I can control getting involved in my neighborhood. Heck, I can run for local office and I can make impact here in my community. And I'm feeling that as that generation starts to take over more, we're going to see more and more of that mentality, which I actually I appreciate. I think it's a good approach. But is that going to be in the, I guess, moving forward mentality, something that is taking away from our ability not to control foreign policy, but to lead? Teddy Roosevelt, love him or hate him, the speak softly and carry a big stick. Right? Exactly. Like that mentality, I think that makes sense from a foreign policy standpoint. I don't want to go and use force to change the behavior of every single country that's out there. But at the same point in time, if I'm ever in a situation where I need to, to flex some muscle, I have the ability to do so. So I think there is very much a what do you call it, a pivot point, a fork in the road. Use your favorite analogy here. But I really do see that we're kind of coming to a fork in the road moving forward. And I'm not really sure which direction we're going to go. If they go the route I think we're going to go, it is going to go back towards this more, hey, I'm an American first, and I'm going to focus on America and my local communities first. And listen, there's pain and suffering overseas, and I am empathetic towards that, but I can't control that, right? I can't go out and be, volunteer and help after a military occupation came through and wiped out a community. I can't do that. I can maybe feel I'm doing something and send my money overseas, but is it going to the areas it needs to go to help make things better? Probably not. So I just feel I'm going to focus more on the things I can see, touch, smell, hear, taste. Like it's the stuff in my local community, in my state, in my country, in America. That's my final thoughts, I guess, Kyle. I know it's kind of rambling there, but that's where I see things. What do you have for us? And what are your final thoughts today?
Yeah, so I definitely hear you on a lot of that, and I think that very well summarizes how a lot of Americans are feeling. What I'll say in response to that is in politics there are frequently pendulum swings from almost one too far of an extreme to the other. So, granted, is nation building in Iraq necessarily in America's best interest? That's a perfectly legitimate question that many Americans are going to say no to. I would caution all of your listeners here, to avoid simply, if you're saying that we should not have been nation building in Iraq, and I hear you on that, do not let the pendulum swing to the other side where, oh my God, the world is now on fire. The Houthis have taken over the shipping throughout half of the world's international shipping lane. I can assure you that is as equally undesirable as the other alternative. So I definitely hear you on the isolationism part from a lot of Americans, but I also just caution about overreacting into the other direction of extreme isolationism. And so I will close with this, that Donald Trump in his first administration was very spot on about this. And so far he's been pretty good about this as well in the second administration, but he really did embody speak softly and carry a big stick. He did not start any foreign wars, but when Iran was messing around, he just simply bombed and took out one of their top generals. And everybody just froze and said, what is going on? And Iran did not try stuff under Trump's first administration. I'll tell you that, because they knew that there would be consequences. So there is a lot of benefit that comes through the speak softly and carry a big stick. But if we're telling the world we want nothing to do with any of this stuff, they're going to take that as a green light. They're going to say, hell yeah, baby, America's gone. And I don't think that's in anyone's interest either. So there can be a very strategic pullback from several of these places for sure. And I definitely think Europe needs to step up their game on this. But I also think waving the white flag and pulling out is sending a massive green light to a lot of people who are not our friends, who will never be our friends, to simply go crazy.
All right, Kyle, we're going to go ahead and put a pin in today's conversation. Do us a favor. Let folks know where they can go ahead, reach out to you if they want to continue the conversation. And also check out more bangers like you have here. Zelensky is a masterclass in how to lose a negotiation. That was over at Real Clear Politics. Kyle, bring us home.
Sure. So you can find me on X. I'm at Kyle P. Moran.
Perfect. All right. Easy enough. Kyle, we appreciate you joining the show today. And folks, if you got some value from today's episode, do me a favor. Go ahead and give it a share. When you do, tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. You can find me on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever it is you have your social medias. And also for the Brian Nichols Show itself, you can find us both as a video show or as a podcast. So for the video content, you can go over to X, to Facebook, to Rumble, and to YouTube. Check us out. We're going live over there every Monday and Friday nights. We get the stream going around 8:30 p.m. Eastern with the show hopefully taking off there around 9 o'clock. So hit the subscribe buttons over there. And of course, make sure you set your calendar. You should be checking those episodes out while they go live. Or if you want to go ahead and just check us out at your own pace, yes, you can watch us over on YouTube or take us on the go. Your favorite podcasting apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Podcast Addict, wherever it is. Just find The Brian Nichols Show, hit subscribe, download all unplayed episodes. We have over 950 episodes here of the show going back to January of 2018. And each episode, I guarantee, will leave you feeling educated, enlightened, and informed. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign things off today. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us. With that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show for Kyle Moran. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.